We are here today to have a meaningful conversation and give you information. I come from the philosophy that information is power, and we believe that when the power stems from people's ability to make the best choice for themselves when equipped with the right knowledge and information. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to empower you. We are here to talk about HUD's Rental Assistance Program, and I'm joined today, and I'm just going to acknowledge them very quickly. Mr. Jim Cunningham, the Deputy Regional Administrator, Donald Cole of HUD, our Asset Resolution Specialist. We also are honored to have representation from Cheryl Burns of CHA, the Chief Housing Choice Voucher. Also in attendance and in the audience is our Field Office Director, Kimberly Dana, from our state office. We have Rosa Neve, Director of CHA HCV Administration, Bria Atkins, and Mr. Jimmy Stewart, who's going to talk about home ownership programs. But let's get started here because you're here to get some information. Now, I want you to know that in the 2024 funding bill, there's a measure that includes about $70 billion for HUD. The Senate bill has already been passed. I think that was yesterday. But if you're familiar with the process, Congress has to pass the same measure in order for it to go forward. So I just want to highlight that there's $31.7 billion for tenant-based Section 8 vouchers and $15.79 billion for project-based rental assistance programs. So that's what's on the table. So do with that. Again, we're giving you some information here. Because Congress did not agree on a budget on October 1st, we are operating under what is called a continuing resolution, which will expire on November 17th. Hopefully, we will have a budget by that time. But let's jump right in. Mr. Cunningham, and I think you're going to have to step up to the mics. Okay, so if everyone, why don't everyone approach the mic and we can save some time here. Okay, great. Now, Mr. Cunningham, CHA receives its money from HUD, but can you explain to the audience the flow of HUD's appropriations, the appropriations I just mentioned for rental assistance? How does it get to CHA?
Okay, so first of all, we need to get the appropriation, and then we get allocations from the Office of Management and Budget. CHA develops certain plans in order to receive money from HUD. On the public housing side, they do an annual plan and a 5-year plan, and they also have an administrative plan for their Housing Choice Voucher Program. Under Congress, we authorize a certain number of Housing Choice vouchers, and then we assign a budget, what we call budget authority, for that number of vouchers. It's not a one-to-one correlation, but so we enter into what we call an annual contributions contract with the Housing Authority on the Housing Choice Voucher side. And that is the budget authority to fund, and Cheryl can give you the numbers, but up to a certain level of Housing Choice vouchers that they are allocated. So we sign a contract with them for the money then CHA then administers. On the public housing side, we also enter into annual contributions contracts for both capital funding for the housing, public housing, and also operating expenses for the public housing. So that all funds into a ACC, we call it the ACC, an annual contributions contract, and that's our contract with CHA or any other housing authority in the country to fund them to run their operations.
Well, let's back up just a bit. What's the difference between public housing, project-based housing, and housing choice voucher?
Okay, so the biggest thing, so there's two, all right, I'm getting ahead of myself. So CHA runs two main programs. They have several programs, but there is what I call traditional public housing. That is public housing that is owned and managed by the housing authority. A resident lives there, their rent is subsidized, they pay 30% of their income for rent, but if they move, that subsidy stays with that project. So it is a built property that is owned and managed by a housing authority. They also can, then there is the tenant-based program known as the Housing Choice Voucher Program. That is where a tenant is issued a voucher, and they can use it anywhere on the private market. Again, they're paying only 30% of their income for rent, but they go out on the private market, work with a private landlord, and enter into a contract like anyone, non-subsidized or subsidized, enters into a lease with a landlord. CHA they pay 30% of their income for rent, and the housing authority will then pick up the difference between the market rent and what they can afford to pay.
Now, there are certain vouchers, and we're going to pivot to CHA in a second, but I just wanted you to talk about our multifamily housing vouchers.
Right. So they're actually, so we also work with private landlords that have, we call it multifamily project-based rental assistance. So they're privately owned. We enter into a contract with them for a certain number of units in their properties that, again, they pay 30% of their income for rent, but they are privately owned, and we have a contract with that owner to provide subsidy that is decent, safe, and sanitary. We make sure we inspect anything that's project-based, we inspect. The housing authority will inspect for housing choice vouchers for we call housing quality standards, but we do inspect them to make sure they're decent, safe, and sanitary and meet our conditions. So they have an obligation.
On that note, we're pretty lucky here today because we have one of our asset specialists, Mr. Donald Cole. And Mr. Donald Cole's duties is to actually monitor and inspect those who are receiving vouchers from HUD through its multifamily program. Mr. Cole, there are probably some owners listening in today. What can they do to make sure that their properties continue to receive subsidies under that program?
The owners can make sure that they maintain the properties in decent, safe, and sanitary conditions. They need to make sure that the tenants get the needs met at the properties, and that's where I come in. When they don't, I try to go out and I like to call it developing a team, and I work with the management agent, the owners, and the residents because I feel like collectively we can do more than we can do individually. So I work with them, and a lot of times it's just a matter of not knowing the resources or not knowing certain things that make things fall short. But I come in and try to work with everybody together and make sure that the property is as best as it can be and the residents are serviced as best as they can be.
Now, there's also probably a lot of residents listening to us this morning. What can they do to help you in your job and to help them have a voice in the conditions and improving the conditions under which they are residing?
Well, I love it when a resident takes their home in pride and where they live, and they look at it as their home and not just an apartment. And they need to know that if they are not being serviced properly, that they do have some places they can reach out to. First, they should go to the management agent and express whatever problem they have with them. And if they feel like that problem is not being resolved properly on that level, they should contact their contract administrator. In some cases, that's HUD, some cases it's CHA, but we also have other contract administrators. One is National Housing Compliance for the state of Illinois. And then if you go to those two levels and you still don't get satisfaction, that's where our office, and a lot of times that's where I come in, and I meet with the owner and our agent to make sure that whatever problem there is resolved in a timely manner and is resolved satisfactorily.
Well, Mr. Cole, I know that you have other commitments this morning, but I have a question for you. I'm a resident, and I have a problem. What should I do?
You should first contact your management agent. And understand sometimes residents feel like, oh, I can't go there. But it is against the law for a management agent to retaliate against you for coming to them with any problem that you have. So if you have a problem, first go to the management agent. If you don't get resolved with them, contact your contract administrator. And make sure they understand the nature of it, and they should investigate. But if for some reason that does not get resolved on that level, you should contact our office, and we will look into it and try to get resolved for you as soon as possible.
Thank you for the work that you do. Now, I would like to turn to Ms. Burns from CHA. You oversee the day-to-day management of the HCV program for CHA. Could you tell us about that program?
Sure. So The CHA is the third largest PHA in the nation, and we are the largest landlord in the city of Chicago. We have, and I manage, over 47,000 vouchers. So we assist more than 47,000 families through our voucher program each year. So as has already been expressed by my colleagues here, in our program, once a family is qualified to receive the assistance, we work with both that property owner and the family to enter into what we call a housing assistance payments contract, and then the family also enters into a lease with the property owner, and then we begin paying the difference between what that family can pay and the market rent. So we perform regular inspections. The unit has to pass inspection before we will pay any rent on a unit. And a family can rent anywhere in the city of Chicago. I am happy to say that our program assists families in all 77 community areas in the city of Chicago. So it doesn't matter where people want to live. They can access it through the voucher program, thanks to some flexibilities that the CHA has with HUD. So we encourage property owners out there to consider the voucher program. We have lots of educational resources to help you do that. And for families, we have, again, our program is pretty fully utilized. So of the vouchers that we have, we're already using 98% of those, and we have applicants that are currently looking for housing. So, yeah, I mean, that's essentially a program.
Ms. Burns, can we pivot back to owners? Do you have any incentives for owners to work with the HCB program?
We do have incentives. So again, we can pay some of those higher rents that owners are charging in Lakeview or downtown. So we do have incentives that will allow families to rent in some of the higher rent areas. Additionally, in lower poverty areas, we also do incentive payment to new property owners. So if you're not renting on the voucher program and you have a property in what we call a mobility area, we will give you 1 month's rent with your first rental payment. So if the rent on the unit is $2,500 and the family pays $500 and the CHA pays $2,000, that first month you're going to get $4,500 from the CHA because we're going to give you 1 month full contract rent. We also are just working out the logistics of a new activity where if there is a property owner that has more than 25 families in a building, that we can inspect a percentage of their properties annually, and as long as no more than 50% of them fail, then we won't inspect the entire building. So we're trying to do some things with our larger property owners that have inspectors coming out 2 and 3 times a month. We're trying to ease that burden for them.
So in other words, the voucher program cannot work without landlords. We must have landlords. I just want to ask Mr. Cunningham, can you tell the audience what HUD is doing as far as landlord outreach and education?
Sure. We are out there trying to recruit them and explain the benefits of the voucher program. One of the biggest things is it's a guaranteed check the first of the month, every month, that as long as everyone's in compliance. We've also worked with, there are special purpose vouchers that CHA has to help veterans, to help persons with disabilities, people that are experiencing homelessness. So we are working to help coordinate with those landlords and explain to them the supports that are out there in the community to help folks that may not necessarily be ideal renters, but we have supportive services that make them very good tenants in addition to that. So we're explaining our programs to them and also coming up with, working with CHA and other housing authorities across the country to come up with incentives that work. Some people are doing, whether it's inspections, but also some finder's fees and things like that. So we are incentivizing programs and explaining to housing authorities across the country that they can use these exceptions to recruit landlords.
I just want to go back to Mrs. Burns because I want the record to be clear on this. How can property owners get involved with the voucher program?
So we typically, the relationship between a property owner and the CHA starts when a voucher holder approaches that property owner and they complete what's called a request for tenancy approval. It gives us all the information about the unit, the age of the building, the number of bedrooms, what utilities the family will pay. And so that usually starts the relationship. But you can also advertise any property that you have for rent on a website that most of our families use to search, which is called affordablehousing.com. And there you can, and you don't have to just rent to a voucher holder, but a lot of renters use that site to search for units. And we work almost exclusively with them for families to find units. So we encourage property owners that are looking to rent to voucher holders to reach out, or you can contact contact us, and our owner services division can make sure that any listings are posted on a regional office for families that come into the office.
Thank you so much. I just want to emphasize that under the leadership of Secretary Fudge, HUD operates from the philosophy that a house is more than just four walls and a roof. It's about community building, economic development, that we must work to strengthen the housing market to bolster the economy and protect our communities. Housing is one aspect of that, but we are about building inclusive and sustainable communities and to free them from discriminatory practices and transform the way that people are doing business in the housing industry. Mr. Cunningham, can you just do a very quick overview of some of the other programs that tie into our housing, commitment to the residents and the listeners?
Certainly. So HUD has a variety of programs. We're talking about mostly our housing programs, but we have a community planning and development division that provides grants to state and local governments that often are used to assist housing. They do a lot of housing rehabilitation programs. Our home program actually assists people like CHA as they do development to increase the supply of housing. We also have an Office of Lead Hazard Control and Healthy Homes that provides grants to reduce lead hazards in homes. The City of Chicago has a very big grant, but we know that childhood lead poisoning is a health issue, but it's also it affects them throughout their life. So we're out there trying to remediate those homes. So a healthy home is a good home. We also have a program called the Older Home Modification Program that allows seniors to remain in their home to make modifications, whether it's ramps or just things that make their day-to-day life easier. So we're trying to do a whole gamut of things. We just came out with a green and resilient retrofit program for our multifamily portfolio that addresses a couple things. One is climate change, so we want our properties to be vital and climate friendly, but also allows additional resources through to go into reinvestment and recapitalization of these properties. Some of these properties were originally subsidized 30, 40 years ago, so they need this infusion of capital. So Congress has given us that program to actually do that. I just want to mention one other program that's not a HUD program, but it is, and it often gets confused, but it's the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program. It is actually an IRS program. It is not subsidy, but the rents are capped. It's run through the Illinois Housing Development Authority, and the City of Chicago also has a program, but it helps develop affordable housing with rent caps. Sometimes CHA will do project-based rental assistance on those properties, but they have to accept vouchers in those programs. So it's another one. It's not subsidies, but there are income limits for those properties.
And just to flag the low-income tax credit, this is, again, information for you. That is the tool that is being used most frequently now to build affordable housing. So as You look around and say, where will we get more housing? We need more housing. Low-income tax credits is a tool being used by developers, and we are always available to give you more information on that. However, there's another aspect of HUD, because we do housing enforcement from a fair housing perspective. We believe that people should not be denied access to housing based on their race, gender, economic status, et cetera. And Mr. Cunningham, can you talk about our fair housing program just very quickly?
Sure. So HUD enforces the Fair Housing Act that creates, that was passed in 1968, that reduces housing discrimination. We are responsible for enforcing that, so we have a complaint line. We have an Office of Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity that will take those complaints and investigate them. We also have partners, the state of Illinois, Illinois Department of Human Rights, that also enforces the Fair Housing Act, so you can call them and make those complaints. We also have a Fair Housing Initiatives program that actually does education and outreach. So we fund nonprofits to talk about residents' rights. Mr. Cole mentioned that you should not fear retaliation for making a complaint. The Fair Housing Act also ensures that you have the right to speak up if you feel you've been discriminated for one of the protected classes that the regional administrator mentioned. So please, you can contact us. We have some handouts that actually have contact information for our office on fair housing, but you can, I also want to give you our phone number, Mr. Cole. If you get to that third step, you can call our Chicago office at 312-353-6236.
Thank you so much. Again, I want to thank Mr. Cole, Mr. Cunningham, and Ms. Burns. I want to thank Reverend Jackson for allowing us to address your audience this morning. And we will remain here to answer any questions later from the in-person audience. Thank you again. I hope that you will feel that HUD is your friend and we are available. Do not hesitate to contact us. Thank you.